Let's watch some Milton Friedman. Here we go.
You spoke a few times, you mentioned distribution of wealth.
Sure.
But most of what I've heard you talking about has been about the distribution of income rather than about the distribution of wealth.
Yeah.
Now, you wouldn't argue, at least I hope you wouldn't, that the person in, let's say India is genetically inferior, say, to the person in America. It's rather through the purely arbitrary circumstance of birth that he's in a country with a less developed economy or in a family that doesn't have as large a share of the capital. And that's not something that he's to blame for.
Oh, I'm not blaming anybody.
Even if the free market
Here we
system
go. Now all of a sudden you notice that these leftists were utilizing India as a justification to desecrate capitalism. Yet now the leftists, this was leftists back in the day, the modern day leftists today are justifying why they should get more money. Even though India is still being exploited by many different factions for labor, for cheap manufacturing, etc. Now the leftists want a universal basic income of at least $2,000 a month. They want free EBT cards for food. They want free housing, etc. Notice how the leftists were concerned back then about poor India and how India was, not necessarily economically productive, and comparing that to the modern American economic power and why that America was, I don't know, in the liberals' eyes back then, I don't know, we were selfish. I don't know what the fuck the argument was. But now, leftists, instead of arguing that, hey, us in America, we're the richest country, meanwhile, 80% of the world lives on less than $2 a day. You don't hear leftists saying that anymore. You don't hear liberals, leftists, Democrats saying that 80% of the world lives on less than $2 a day. Why? Because modern leftists want shit. They want a universal basic income for $2,000 a month, just for existing, just for breathing. They want free food. They want free education, not just public education. They want a free college education. Unfucking believable how the evolution of the liberal went from this, all right, concerned about, hey, look, India and China, they're the third world, and they're in very impoverished third world conditions, and here I am in America, I'm very white guilty about it because I come from a Leave It to Beaver family, I have a great upbringing, I have the money to go to expensive ass colleges. How quaint the left have just completely geared away from this.
Works and everyone progresses an equal amount, that person who started out with a lesser share of the capital is still going to end up with a lesser share of the capital.
That's right.
And there's nothing in the free market system that's going to enable him to make up for what was a purely arbitrary deficit in the first place. And given that the kind of people who become successful capitalists...
by the way, liberal white dude, all right? Life isn't fair. Okay? Some people are born short, some people are born tall. Some people have metabolisms to be skinny the rest of their lives. Some people don't, and they become chubby, fat. Some folks are smarter, some folks are dumber. All right? I mean, that's just the way the world works, okay? Life isn't fucking fair. Life isn't fair to humans. Life isn't fair to any living organism on this planet. And as I've stated many times, every living organism on this planet has to eat and kill another living organism in order to survive. Life isn't fair, okay? And that's what these leftists don't get it. They don't understand that shit.
Capitalists do not become that way by giving away their wealth voluntarily. Isn't it necessary to forcibly redistribute wealth before you can begin to operate under a capitalist?
Here it is. You see, here comes the socialism and communism. All right, we have to forcibly redistribute wealth. And I hope that many of you understand, after the George Floyd riots, and I saw the riots from every city, all I saw was American-born and American-bred garbage that was out there, that was committing the looting, that was out there committing all the violence, committing all the riots, American born, American educated, American entitlement based. And yet, what are these people doing? They're rioting, looting, and committing acts of violence for not only racial and social justice, but they want more free shit. And I would hope after all the display of disgusting fucking violence and the disgusting rioting and the disgusting looting because of George Floyd, I hope that you all understand now that giving anything, any living organism, giving anything to anybody is a bad fucking idea. All right? I mean, can we agree to that at this point in time after all the fucking violence we've seen from American-born, American-bred, and American-educated trash that's out here committing acts of violence? And what are they doing? They're not committing any kind of protests. They're not out here taking control of their city hall and trying to pass laws or doing anything, quote, political. They're out there committing acts of violence on small business owners so they can take their merchandise, so they can take and steal whatever it is that they don't want to take the initiative to earn to get. That's what this is all about. Free bullshit. And I hope that you all understand that all these socialists and communists, their argument is moot now that we've seen the George Floyd riots, now that we've seen the violence and the looting. All these people that are looting and fucking rioting and committing acts of violence are American-born shit. American-born and American publicly educated. Remember that.
System.
No, it is not. Now, but let's examine this argument. Because of course it's true. There's no justice in the distribution of income or wealth. I never would argue there is. Those who are wealthy don't deserve to be wealthy any more than those who are poor deserve to be poor. It's pure accident. And we might, but if you start to look at things that way, you're going to go down the wrong line. Because you're going to get back into this kind of a situation of destroying the good things, destroying what is possible in the search of an impossible ideal. The only way in which you can redistribute effectively the wealth is by destroying the incentives to have wealth. And the question is, what is the way, what is the system which will offer those people who are so unlucky as to be born without good positions, what is the system which will offer them the greatest opportunity?
Well, one possible way of redistributing the wealth without affecting the incentives to earn as much income as possible is simply to have a 100% inheritance tax.
But
Since that won't affect the incentives, it's only after the person's dead anyway.
I beg your pardon. I'm afraid, I don't know the family you come from. I don't, but as you grow up, you will discover that this is really a family society and not an individual society. We tend to talk about an individualist society, but it really isn't. It's a family society. And the greatest incentives of all, the incentives that have really driven people on, have largely been the incentives of family creation, of family.
That is correct.
Of establishing.
And you know, I'm glad that Milton Friedman puts this in this perspective, because family is the reasoning, at least in civilized Western civilization families, the whole reason, at least this is why the minorities say that white people have, quote, white privilege. Because most white folks, when they decide to have a child, okay, they make sure to make as much money as possible, put aside so much money, gain assets, build businesses, have stock, buy real estate, all with the intention of leaving it to their children, so their children have a better lives than they had, etc. And this is why all the minorities talk all this shit about white privilege this and white privilege that. The reason why minorities bitch about white privilege is because white folks, at least in aggregate numbers, all right, care about their children, and they care about their families. I mean, take a look at the statistics of births in the black community. 85% of the black folks that are born in this country are born out of wedlock. They're born to a single mother. And that same single mother is obviously going to have multiple children. Do you think that single mother is going to care about saving her money? Is going to care about investing? Is going to care about building a business or buying real estate so she can leave it to her children? No. All right, that's not the case. And the same thing goes for Latin families, etc. And this is where Milton Friedman is talking about the family is really the construct in which this capitalist system flourishes. Because as opposed to being a non-family and being out there for your own selfish needs, for booze, food, and broads, and, kind of like what the stupid leftist is saying, like, we need to tax the people that are rich 100% so we can incentivize them to blow all the money before they die, and meh. And you see, that's why the globalists are trying to get rid of the family, all right?
Their families on a decent system. What is the effect of 100% inheritance tax? The percent of 100% inheritance tax is to encourage people to dissipate their wealth in high living.
What's the harm in that?
The harm in that is that where do you get the factories? Where do you get the machines? Where do you get the capital investment? Where do you get the incentive to improve technology? If what you're doing is to establish a society in which the incentive is for people who, if they by accident accumulate some wealth, to waste it in frivolous entertainment. The thing
frivolous
is,
entertainment. I mean, if you have not heard this man lecture, this was the father of capitalism, in my opinion. I mean, he makes it, and that's why he always went out and debated these liberal fucking students and tried to tell these people that, look, you morons, all right, we can't tax 100%. Okay, because then what are people going to be incentivized to spend on? On eating, shitting, fucking entertainment, etc. And what is that going to do? That's going to allocate all the resources towards that production as opposed to the machines that produce the products, as opposed to the services that are now around because we're able to save, we're able to bequeath wealth, etc.
Amazing that people don't really recognize is the extent to which the market system has, in fact, encouraged people and enabled people to work hard and sacrifice in what I must confess I often regard as an irrational way for the benefit of their children.
That's what I'm talking about. And that should be the basis of the American dream, folks. That's why you've got every media outlet trying to make you into a disgusting, sex-driven fucking heathen. That's why you've got OnlyFans.com turning every fucking broad into a slut bag, because they're trying to eliminate the family unit. The family unit is the basis of not only Americana, but the capitalist system that we all appreciate, that gives us the economic freedom to carve out our destiny, okay? Now, whether or not you personally want to have children or personally want to get married, that's your prerogative. But in aggregate, this is what created the true wealth of America, was individuals planning to have children and purposely trying to work their asses off and either gain assets, stock, real estate, businesses, and give it to their children. And this is where the minorities, when they talk about white privilege, this is what they're talking about. And it's not about white privilege. It's about how a culture raises its children. And right now, if you look at the statistics in the urban demographics, over 85% of males that are black are born to a single mother. And a single mother is not going to work her ass off to save money, is not going to work her ass off to invest, is not going to work her ass off to gain real estate to give to her children. On the contrary, because we have an entitlement system that rewards people the more children they have when they're single, they're doing it for a monetary gain for their own personal well-being. And I'm talking about the mother. That's why I cringe whenever I see some basketball player, some football player that obviously had some dirty dish rag whore mother raise these poor guys in the hood and force them to go into sports and force them to be the patriarchs, at least financially, of the family, I cringe whenever I hear them saying, my mama, I love my mama, mama, when the mama didn't do shit.
Observation is that almost all people value the utility which their children will get from consumption higher than they value their own.
This is
Here
correct.
are parents who have every reason to expect that their children will have a higher income than they ever had. And they scrimp and save in order to be able to leave something for their children. I think you are sort of like a bull in a china shop if you talk about the 100% inheritance tax having no incentive effects. It would destroy a continuing society. It would destroy a society in which there are links from one generation to the next.
Okay, Mr. Friedman, referring to the statements that you made about women who advocate equal pay for equal work.
Gee, I thought I'd get a rise out of that sooner or later. Delighted to have it.
Yes, okay, I just would like to know if you're insinuating or perhaps, point blankly saying that women and other minorities' skills are inferior to those of those now holding those jobs, and that they need to go through a period where their skills need to be improved and therefore deserve to be paid less?
No, I don't think desert has anything to do with it. I'm not. First of all, I think desert is an impossible thing to decide. Who deserves what? Nobody deserves anything.
He's right.
Thank God we don't get what we deserve. But I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying a very different thing. I'm saying that the actual effect of requiring equal pay for equal work will be to harm women. If women's skills are higher than men's in a particular job and are recognized to be higher, the law does no good.
Of course.
Because then they will be able to compete and can get the same.
Don't women understand this? First of all, women need to understand that there are more women than men right now in the workforce. Okay, this is back in the fucking late 70s in which this stupid bitch was trying to ask this question to Milton Friedman. Now, folks, over 60+% of the workforce, I think it's even higher than that, I think it's like 65%, are women in the workforce. So based on those numbers, of course their average salary or average hourly wage is going to be on the low end because there are more numbers in the job field. Okay? There's more women in the job. And whatever men can find for work, since you women are all now taking the jobs away from men, are jobs that only men can do. I know it's hard for you women to understand this, all right? But the reason that you have a higher salary or hourly wage for men compared to women is not only the numbers, not only is there more women working, but the jobs that men are getting are fucking white collar and blue collar jobs that aren't necessarily conducive to women. I mean, blue collar jobs and the construction and the oil fields and these jobs that are mostly not conducive to women. And in the white collar arena, I mean, lest we forget that most women decide that not only do they want to become corporate moguls, but many of these women want to have children as well. And that is not conducive to being someone like a man who works longer hours, who's out here busting his hump, all right, doing whatever it takes to get the job done. Meanwhile, you have a woman who wants to do the same thing as this corporate man, but is utilizing a child as an excuse. And you can't have it both ways, women, all right? If you want to become a corporate mogul, you can't just go out right after you get the fucking job and say, I want to shit out a child. All right, these are facts, okay?
Income. If their skills are less for whatever reason, maybe it isn't because it's their sex, maybe it's because they were out of the labor force, maybe it's for other reasons, and you say the only way you are able to hire them is by paying the same wage, then you're denying them the only weapon they have to fight with. If the unwillingness of the men to hire them is because the men are sexist, what's the phrase, racist, sexist pigs or whatever, if that's the only reason they want to hire them, nonetheless, you want to make it costly to them to exercise their prejudice. If you say to them, you have to pay the same wage no matter whether you hire women or men, then here's Mr. Sexist Pig. It doesn't cost him anything to hire men instead of women. However, if the women are free to compete and to say, well, now look, I'll offer my work for less, then he can only hire men if he bears a cost. If the women are really good as a man,
thank you,
then he's paying a price for discriminating. And what you are doing, not intentionally, but by misunderstanding, when you try to get equal pay for equal work laws, is what you are doing is reducing to zero the cost imposed on people who are discriminating for irrelevant reasons. And I would like to see a cost imposed on them. I'm on your side, but you're not. Thank you.
You're not on your own woman's side is right. I'm telling you, Milton Friedman, man, knows how to deliver just pure logic to a group of leftists. It's fucking great, man.